cutting down the trees, putting them onto the sawmill, and cutting them into lumber. This log here was by far the biggest, and it's a cherry log that I'm cutting into 3-inch thick slabs, and I'm going to book match them together to make the top of the bar. But first, I had to stack them and dry them for many months before they were even close to being dry enough to consider using. I then put them into the garage to dry out for a couple more months before I set to work building the bar. I decided the first thing I should do is thickness plane all the lumber that I had brought up. I'm building this bar exclusively out of cherry and cedar. So I thickness planed all the cherry down to 3/4 of an inch and all the cedar down to 1.5 inches because that's the sizes that I'm going to be using for this bar. And I wanted to do that because, as you can see, the thickness planer makes quite a mess, and I wanted to get that out of the way right off the bat. I then take a lot of these boards that I have and just run them through the joiner, more to just clean up the edges than anything else. It worked pretty good for that. After I have all the thickness planing and joining done, I set to start cutting my lengths for the front panel. The front panel of the bar is going to be the most complicated and the one that I want to look the best because for the most part that's what everybody's going to be staring at. So as you can see here, I cut all the pieces and get them laid out. Notice this one's a little rough on the one side, so flip it over and that looks a lot better. I'm making the whole frame out of white cedar, and then the inlays and the top of the bar will be made out of cherry. I'm going to be anchoring the 4 corners with some 6x6 posts. You can see the front posts here are the same height as the bar, and the back 2 posts will be higher with a connecting piece. Give the bar a lot more character. I decide I'm gonna biscuit join it all together, and I haven't done a lot of biscuit joining, so I'm gonna wait for my dad to come over and give me a hand to do that. So while I'm waiting for Dad, I take the opportunity just to cut a little groove in the backside of all of these boards because that will be what my cherry panels sit up against once I have everything assembled. I also take the opportunity to get the 2 smaller side panels laid out while I'm waiting so they are ready to go. On a couple of these cherry boards that I'm just kind of loosely putting together right now and book matching them, that it had that really neat kind of design that for cupboard makers or something, they might actually throw that part out. But I thought it looked really cool, and for this build I'm actually going to be featuring it front and center on the bar. I pull that out right away and get to work on making that panel because I definitely didn't want to make a mistake cutting through it or something like that. So I get that cut up and set aside just so I don't make any mistakes on that. By then, Dad had some time to come out and help me and show me kind of the ropes of biscuit joining. I have done it a little bit, but for this project, I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing. We get this one main front panel joined and glued together, and the next day I take the clamps off of it. The clamps on this job were definitely the bottleneck. I should have had a lot more, but I tried to make do with what I had. So every day I kind of tried clamping together what I could and then moved on to the next part. So here I have the main panel all glued and dried together, and then I can set off trying to do the same thing to these small panels. Now that Dad helped me do that big panel, kind of gave me the confidence to go ahead and try these smaller ones by myself. If you're not familiar with how a biscuit joiner works, you kind of just move it into the wood that you're wanting to join together, and you can see it puts this little almost semicircle kind of groove in the wood, and what I'm holding in my hand there is actually called the biscuit. So you put this little semicircle groove in both pieces of the wood you're wanting to join together, then you fill it with glue, put that biscuit in there, and then the idea is when you clamp it together, it will hold it all together. So you can see that I'm putting this one side panel together. So I've put the little grooves in both sides of each piece of wood that I want to put together. I fill the semicircle grooves with wood glue. I use a generous amount because I would rather, even if it squishes out, I'd rather sand it off later than have to deal with it coming apart. So put a generous amount of glue in there, put your biscuit in, and then you can kind of set out to putting it together almost like a little puzzle. You just put them together so the biscuit's sticking in each side of the wood, and might take you a little bit to get it all lined up the way you want it, but I think it's a really good way of joining wood if you don't want screws or nails or anything like that showing. And then you kind of just fit it all together like I am here, and then once you get it all fit together and everything's all lined up and flush, then you can throw your clamps on it and leave it overnight to dry. One of the things with biscuits is it does allow you a little bit of play. You can move the pieces around a little bit. One of the downfalls of that is you really have to make sure that you're clamping it exactly in place. You can see here, once I clamped this up tight, I wasn't really happy with how it was lining up, so I just loosened it off, gave it a few taps, and moved it back to where I exactly wanted it. I should have been using 2 clamps on these pieces, one on each upright, but again, I just didn't have enough clamps in time to be clamping one of these panels each day, so I used what I had and it turned out. So now that I have the front panel and the 2 side panels made up, all that's left is the longer back panel. And because the back panel is not going to be something most people are going to be looking at, I'm not as concerned with it. So instead of going to the work of biscuit joining it and all that, what I choose to do is just put a bit of glue on the ends of each 2x4 and just toenail some screws into it to hold it together. This panel more or less is just to hold the weight of the bar top. Due to the shortage of clamps that I had to do a lot of this project maybe in an order that a lot of people wouldn't do, or that you wouldn't really want to do. These are the cherry inserts, and instead of just gluing them all together at once and clamping them all together, I kind of had to do 1 or 2 of them a night kind of thing. So I'd run them through the joiner, glue them together, and then just set them aside for the night. And then whatever part of the build that I was taking off the clamps that day, then I would set to sanding all the glue off, sanding it nice and smooth kind of thing, and just having it ready to go for when the rest of the project had been glued together and it was ready to go. You can kind of see here I'm just working on getting some of the glue that's came out sanded off nice and smooth, and like I was saying before, I'd rather have to do that than have to bother with re-gluing or anything like that. I'm not sure if you can tell on the video, but there's a wooden strip that I glued on the top and bottom of this panel, and I did the same thing on all the panels, and that's just so that the cherry panel that I'll be putting in has something to sit against. You can remember before the uprights, I just cut it with the table saw. I couldn't do that with the horizontal pieces. I had to glue a piece in because if you can imagine me running the table saw right through, you would kind of see the groove on the outside. I could have also achieved the same thing by running a router around the inside. Just from my personal experience, the routers, one of the things that I don't have a lot of experience with, so I was more comfortable doing it the way I did. What you're looking at now is one of the panels that I had clamped together earlier right in the middle. And the issue that I ran into is you can see it's kind of wobbly. So that's a lesson learned on why I should have probably clamped 2 clamps on the upright supports. But I figure that I'll be screwing it into place. I'm lucky it's cedar and I'll be able to pull that straight. It wasn't too bad. This is what I was talking about with making strips for the top and bottoms of all these inlays, so that the cherry panel can kind of sit against them from the back side, and the cedar will kind of cover it up nicely. I quickly learned that cedar is pretty soft, so I use an extra piece of wood to try to clamp these filler strips in, so that my clamps don't leave a big groove in my finished product. I also had some trial and error here. I'm not perfect, like nobody is. The clamps fell off there. I think right here I'm kind of figuring out that I actually cut my strip a little bit too narrow, so it's not exactly lining up the way I would like. So I pull that off and quickly run over to rip some new ones before the glue dries too much, and eventually I get it all lined up and clamped down, and I kind of continue on with this process, just clamping and waiting overnight for things to dry. Here's some 6x6 posts that are going to be anchoring the four corners. The table saw was the only saw we had that could really cut. It can't cut through the whole thing, but in 2 passes I think it could cut a little bit over half of the posts, so I opted to use that to kind of flush cut the ends, just so I had a nice straight top and bottom to be working with. There's going to be 4 of these 6x6 posts, 1 in each corner of the bar. The 2 front ones actually are just go up to underneath the height of the bar, and the 2 back ones are actually quite a bit taller. So the 2 front ones I'm able to just cut on the table saw like this to length. The 2 taller 6x6 posts are going to be for the back of the bar, and they're going to have 2x6s spanning from end to end. So I notch out an 1.5-inch groove on either front and back of either of these posts, and then once I'm done that, I can cut it to length with a handsaw. And once I get that done, I chisel it out so that my 2x6 can sit flush there, and I just use the belt sander to clean it up a little bit so it can sit nice and flat against it there. And once I'm done with these 6x6 posts, that basically gives me all the pieces that I need to start assembling the base. I cut some 1.5 by 1.5 inch strips, and I just put them on these posts on the 4 6x6s, and that's going to give me something to screw my panels into, and you'll see here in a second how that's going to work. I'm going to start off with putting the sides together. So I have one of the taller 6x6 posts here that I'm going to set into place, and I also have one of the shorter posts. So I kind of line them up with my 2.5-inch strips facing each other, and that will give me something to set my panel against here and screw it into. So what you're looking at now is kind of the width and one end of the bar, and you can kind of see how my cherry panel can now sit flush in against that. So I can screw into my panels from the inside, and then that way when you're looking at it from the outside you won't see any kind of screws or anything like that. So this is what it looks like when I have both ends done. So that's going to be the 2 ends of the bar, and I can now carry over my front panel and just set it into place, and same deal, I can just screw it into place from the inside. Here I'm clamping an extra panel right into the center that's going to hold that special cherry panel that I was showing you before, because I want to feature it front and center, and I thought that little bump out would give it just a little bit of extra character. Here's the one last back panel that I was screwing together out in the driveway. It's just going to be at the back here, so I wasn't too concerned about it looking as nice as the rest of the bar. So now that I have all 4 panels, the front, back, 2 sides, kind of just tacked in, I just wanted to do that first to make sure everything was going to fit together nice and tight and everything look good. And once I'm satisfied with that, then kind of set to screwing it together more solidly. I also cut quite a bit of bracing. You can kind of see I start off by putting these braces all the way along the bottom. I also put them on the top. I put braces on the corners. I just put a lot of bracing in place. I was pretty concerned with cedar being not the strongest wood in the world, and the 3-inch thick cherry bar top that's 10 feet long weighs a lot. So I just wanted to make sure there was a lot of bracing, that the bar couldn't move, front to back, side to side, collapse in any way. So I spent a lot of time kind of shoring that all up and just making sure that it was very strong, so there's no way it could collapse under the weight of the bar top. I also start cutting pieces. You can see I'm putting what I would call the floor in here. I also made a shelf, all the cherry panels that are going to go in the front there. I leave all of that out for now because I want to be able to carry the bar over to its final destination without it weighing a ton. So I take it over there and put the rest of it together over there. But anyways, now that I have it assembled, that gives me the confidence to cut all these cherry panels down to the proper size, kind of get it prepped to be installed. Each one of these panels is just 2 wide cherry boards glued together, so I was a little concerned about them warping. So my solution to that was simply to cut these birch pieces. Birch is very strong, so I cut those and just screwed them onto the back of these panels to kind of try to dissuade the boards from doing any kind of warping or any kind of moving like that. I enjoy using just a hand screwdriver for doing stuff like this some of the time, just because with the hardwoods and that, you can just get kind of a better feel for when things are really nice and tight, and I don't want to risk stripping the screw or anything like that. So again, I just get that all ready to go. I get them sanded, prepped, and just ready to go, so that when I do take the bar over and get it set in place, that I can just kind of quickly set these panels in, and I'll just screw them in from the back, so again that you can't see any screws, and just having it all ready to go, ready to be installed. I think once I got it over there, it only just took me not too long, only a few minutes, just to screw all these panels in, and I think it worked out great doing it that way. So that kind of gives you a little teaser of what it's going to look like. I just kind of set them there for a minute just to give myself a little look at what I think it might look like in the end. Now that I'm done with the base and it's all ready to go, that allows me to start on what I consider to be the real star of the show. It doesn't look like much here, but I'm hoping for big things once it's all finished. These are 2 book-matched cherry pieces, and like I said before, they're 3 inches thick. I have since cut them down to length, so they're just over 10 feet long now. The narrowest point, I believe, is around 26 inches, and the widest point is about 42 inches, which makes this far too big to use any of the tools in our garage, like the thickness planer and the joiner planer. So I'm going to have to get kind of creative with how I do this. Another option would have been to take it somewhere, some kind of woodworking shop to get them to do it for me, but hey, that would take all the fun out of it for me. And also, I'm not looking to spend a fortune on this project, and I think I have a few ideas of how I can do this, and I think it actually turned out really well. So again, trying to keep costs down. I could have bolted this all together with steel. It probably would have been a lot stronger, but trust me, this birch, it feels like steel a lot of the time. It is a very strong wood. That's the lighter colored pieces here. It's birch that I'm using to attach the two sides together with. I'm doing that with 4" by 5/16 lag bolts, and I think I bought a couple dozen of those, which allows me to spread these birch strips out across the whole length of the bar top. I can't remember exactly the increments, but I think they're pretty generous, and in the end it ended up holding together very well. Again, I kind of tighten it up to a certain point, and then I use my ratchet here just so I can feel it snugging up, just so I don't break anything. Or I'm not too familiar with working with hardwoods that much yet, and this is by far the biggest project in terms of size, like the size of this bar top that I've done. So I just want to make sure I'm careful and don't crack anything or split anything. And as you can see here, I get all these birch strips attached. It pulls the top together nice and tight, and I flip it over, and that's what I'm looking at for my top. In order to get this all smoothed out the way I want it to be, I think just strictly using a belt sander would have taken far too long, especially because one of the sides ended up being almost 1/8 of an inch thicker, and that was my fault because I know that with the sawmill I was using, I could have done a lot better job getting the two sides of the spar a lot closer to being perfect in matching the widths. But hindsight is 2020, so the solution I came up with was I purchased this 3.5-inch electric hand planer. I wasn't too sure how well it was going to work. I haven't used one of these small hand planers before, but I was very pleasantly surprised with how well of a job it did. Of course, it's not as good as, you know, a big floor model thickness planer, but it did a very good job at just smoothing the bar top out very well, in my opinion. Start off on the left side here just because it's the side that is a little bit higher than the other side, and once I get that kind of ground down to be even with the other side of the bar, I just kind of go over the bar top in various ways. I go up and down. I go on the 45-degree angle, just to try to kind of take out any little inconsistencies, make it nice and flat. With this little hand planer, I'm not going to make this bar top perfectly straight, if you know what I mean. It's kind of going to stay how it is, but it does a really good job at smoothing it out really well, taking out any little imperfections, and to the average person just looking at it, it ended up looking perfect in my opinion. It does leave the little ridges you can probably see running up and down there, but that's what they make belt sanders for. So I fire up the belt sander, and you know, half an hour or so of belt sanding with this 40 grit paper that I got on there does wonders on it, and it really starts shaping up and looking really good fairly quickly. It's at this time that my brother and his fiance show up, which kind of makes me start sweating a little bit because I know the wedding is only about 1 week away, and I'll see what my brother has to say.
That looks sweet. Belt sanding it. On to the next step.
Yeah, getting all the ridges out, like you can see all the ridges from the planer.
Yeah.
So
looks so sweet.
It sounds like he approves, which makes me happy because I don't think he really had seen too much of what I was up to that point. So I'm glad it was sufficient for what he was hoping for too. I wish I had got some more footage. My camera died. You just saw my dad there. He routed this strip right down the middle for me, and this is what I was talking about, not having a joiner or anything. So our solution was to groove out that middle spot with a router, and then my uncle was gracious enough to give me a walnut board, which I cut that middle strip out of a piece of walnut, and that's kind of how we got around joining the two pieces together. I gouged out all that old dead wood out of the crevices just to get it ready for finishing. And I traced out the bar top on this tar paper so that I could carry it over to the base of the bar and mark out where I had to notch around the back posts. I double checked, probably checked 10 times on that step because I definitely did not want to make a mistake cutting the bar top to fit around these back posts, the one that I'm varithaning now. And with that, I pretty much had everything ready to go. I just had to put the varithane on. So start off varithaning the base there, and here's the top ready to go with some varithane. I had dreams and aspirations of epoxying this whole top, but after doing some math and having less than a week left to go, I decided that there just was not going to be enough time for me to fill all these cracks with epoxy and put another layer of epoxy on top. Luckily, varithane dries within hours, so I was free to put on as many coats of varithane almost as I wanted. So I quickly, over the course of the next couple days, I can't remember exactly how much, but I put on 4 or 5 coats of varithane on the base and the top, and then after that it was ready to go. All I had to do was lift the top onto the bar once we got it in location, and put the panels on the inside, put the shelf in. That probably all took maybe only an hour. So you can really see how the varithane brings out the grain here. It's looking really fantastic in my opinion. So I just got the help of my brother and my dad and a few other people that were around, brought it over, set it in place, and then it was done. It looks like this. I think it turned out extremely well. The top looks amazing in my opinion, and you can see all the cherry inlays in the middle. Right in the middle there's the one that I had my eye on since the beginning. Kind of think it really ties in together with the top. Got the walnut strip right down the middle of the bar top, and I just had so much fun working on this project, and I am very happy with how it turned out. Andrew and Alicia, I'm so happy that I was able to contribute this to your wedding, and hopefully it made your day just a little bit more special having this bar there for you. I wish you much joy and happiness many years into the future, and congratulations. Anyways, everybody, that's all for today's video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.